The attack in Soweto has been widely criticized. According to police statistics, an officer is murdered in South Africa every 4 days. Popcru spokesperson Richard Mamabolo joins us now to discuss what can be done about this. Richard Mamabolo, thank you so much for talking to me. So once again, the Minister of Police is at the family of a police officer who's been killed. What do you make of the call that he's making that no one should kill a police officer and be able to go home and sleep peacefully?
Look, I think we need to go beyond calls. I mean, we've been having calls for, well, since democratic dispensation. I think looking at the very same issue, over the past 20 years, we've had around an average of around 160 police officers killed annually. So we don't think words would be sufficient to deal with the challenge, but rather we need to obviously look into the kind of way that the SAPS has been structured, because that is one of the calls we've been making. I think part of the challenge has also been that every time we have a commissioner or a minister within the SAPS, they don't last their full term, and part of the strategies that they come up with end up being isolated. So those are part of the challenges that we think we need to deal with in order to obviously be in a position where we can obviously limit police killings, but also deal with crime decisively.
In fact, you mentioned that thing about instability and the failure to retain leadership in the police in terms of executive leadership, but also operational leadership. And you make the example of a 10-point plan that had been hatched by former police minister Nathi Mthethwa, and you say that plan was never seen through.
No, definitely. In fact, I think ever since, even beyond Nathi Mthethwa, all the plans have never been followed through. You remember that the former acting commissioner Patlani came with back to basics, which of course we criticized in the fact that it had a lot of managerial positions, which created a lot of there were a lot of managers at the top levels, whilst police in police stations were limited, and that created a duplication of roles within the management, which obviously sent wrong signals and confusing signals to the police on the ground. That has also not been changed up to so far, and it's part of the challenges why we think that the SAPS should be restructured in its totality.
So you make also another very interesting observation. You then, in your statement in response to this particular killing of this police officer, you make the observation that we are responding to this to issues of inequality in society, growing unemployment, by doing policing. You're saying that we should actually be addressing those issues even more. Expand on that point a little bit.
Look, the point is that you need to have different departments working together. We need to have a joint operation where, as much as we're fighting against crime, but we ensure that the level of unemployment are decreased. Of course, more and more of our younger people get educated, and of course job opportunities become available. Otherwise, we're just running a cycle which is not going to end in any beneficial way for the country.
What is your understanding as a union when you have your discussions about the violence that targets police officers, of the firearm situation? It's an ongoing debate. Too many firearms in the hands of civilians in South Africa, licensed and unlicensed, but also South African police officers are also heavily armed, and then it becomes a situation of, which brings about what? I mean, is the violence meted out towards police by criminals because police are armed, or police are armed because the criminals are violent? What is your understanding of that?
Look, part of having a South African police service from a force was to ensure that we also focus on the civilian oversight, meaning that the public needs to play a bigger role in the safety and security of our country. So it's not only a police issue. We think that it is not going to resolve anything, whereas we react by arming police more. Of course, they should be armed in the short term, but the ultimate resolution is that we have gun-free South Africa, which is what we would seek. Yet again, we know that, in fact, in most of the killings that have taken place this year, which is 18 so far, most of the killings have been done because criminals wanted to repossess the firearms of police officers, which then means that there'll be more crime perpetuated against civilians. So the response can therefore not be in a reactionary manner to say that we will obviously look into how we find these criminals, but we should have an SAPS that is not reactive but proactive in dealing with such matters. That is why we're saying that the problem lies within the way the SAPS in itself is structured currently.
Other than the Hawks, is there a unit that perhaps prioritizes the killing of police officers as a particular category of crime? Because, you know, we always say that an attack on a police officer is an attack on the state. One would imagine that perhaps we've reached that level where that prioritization has become necessary.
I think you have realized that about last month there were appointments to, other commissioners dealing with all these aspects, intelligence and all those aspects. We think part of that, their duty, because we've always had a problem where we had acting people who could not also conclude their terms. Part of the changes that have come about recently would obviously ensure that we strengthen the investigative unit and obviously ensure that priority is put on resolving these issues before they even occur.
All right, Richard Mamabolo, thank you so much for coming through and talking to me. He speaks on behalf of the trade union, Popcru, which represents police officers.